morning, Bucknuts. It is April 1st, and I am not Dave Biddle. This is Dan Rubin. It's the Bucknuts Morning 5, joined by Alex Gleitman. This is an emergency BM5. Alex and I are filling in for the ailing Dave Biddle. He is ailing. That's no joke. It's no April Fool's. Alex, how are you this fine morning? It's actually the sun is shining in the Gem City.
The sun is not shining in the Big Apple. It's a little bit of a rainy day here, but hopefully we get your weather tomorrow and have a nice weekend ahead of us. Final Four weekend.
It must be April Fool's if the Gem City is outshining the Big Apple. But it's a good place for us to start. Alex and I are going to start today talking about what has been, I got to say, one of the more interesting weeks for basketball since I've been a part of this whole operation for the last decade. Thad Matta has come out with some general quotes, basically saying we got rid of the dead weight. What's your vibe on the program right now, Alex, from a general perspective? We've heard pretty much everything up until this point. What's just your vibe on the program as we sit here today, April Fool's Day?
Yeah, I mean, whether Thad got rid of the dead weight or not, I will establish it by saying, from my knowledge, talking to various sources of the situation, I think the kids that were on this year's team, the blend of them, whatever it may be, it just was not an ideal situation if you want to build a consistently winning basketball program over the next few years. There were entitlement issues. These kids some of them just didn't want to put in the work necessary, which kind of jives with D'Angelo's comment. And I think, it's very interesting, Thad's choice of words in the article that we put up last night about him talking to the Cleveland.com, the Plain Dealer, about, kind of saying that we want kids here who want to be at Ohio State, who want to be a part of the culture we're trying to build, who want to work hard and, go towards something special. So I will say I do think that there is some truth to what, basically Thad's saying we got rid of the dead weight. Now, that said, that doesn't fix the problem by him saying, we just got rid of the dead weight. Yes, sometimes, you do addition by subtraction. But at the same time now, you have 4 of the 5 guys you recruited in last year's class gone, meaning in a couple years you're going to have no upperclassmen once again. So you're either going to need to bring in a superstar like a D'Angelo Russell type to kind of counter that, or you're going to have to hope that the guys the year ahead or the class you bring in behind then are going to kind of supplement that to be able, in terms of talent and ability and skill and production ultimately on the court, to be able to put out a winning product. So for me, the key now is, great, Thad, you got rid of the dead weight. How are you going to replace them? What are you going to do with this 2016 class? Are you going to bring in graduate transfers? Are you going to bring in, additional talent? Can Markel Johnson reclassify? Are you actually going to get him? So I think these are all questions we need to see Thad answer. And then 2017 seems to be a pretty big recruiting class. They have Caleb Lesson in the fold right now. I think he could be a nice college player. I don't think he's a superstar. I actually think he'd be better off if he stayed with football and was an offensive tackle. I actually think he would have had a better shot in an NFL career than he does in an NBA career, but he could still be a nice player at the college level for the Buckeyes. But I think they need a superstar in that class. You got Gary Trent out there. His father played with Jeff Bowles at Ohio. They have a very good relationship. He grew up in Columbus for a little bit. That's a guy, right now everyone's saying, Duke, you have to go out and get that guy if you're going to kind of resurrect the program, in my opinion, to what it was, even just a few years ago when, they lost to in the Elite Eight to Wichita State the year before. It was Final Four. So, I think they just need to get a superstar and, as Thad said, kind of surround them with very solid players who want to be Buckeyes and who want to kind of buy into what they're preaching. At the same time, my final point here is I think there needs to be at least one coaching staff change, if not a couple. I think ever since Chris Gent left, something's obviously been a little bit off, and I think Thad, needs to not be such a nice guy and needs to go out and make some moves that are going to, help this basketball team get through this.
Yeah, I think those are all great points, Alex, and your coverage of this has been wonderful up until this point. Here's my issue. I'll get this on record. Like I said, I do think Thad obviously deserves the chance to rebuild the program if he is interested in rebuilding it. It's not going to be easy. This is not a one-year fix. I agree they're going to have to make some major recruiting coups. The only thing I could see as an advantage is a lot of the guys they want to bring in clearing that weight out may make them think they're going to get more shots and guys they need to bring in. And so that could help them. My biggest issue with the whole thing, I'm not saying what Thad is saying now is incorrect when he talks about clearing out the dead weight and getting guys that want to be Buckeyes. But they're talking, and it seems like they're talking about these recruits like they were forced to go to the quad and pick out their team. They chose these guys. I mean, they spent the time recruiting them, and now they're talking about them as if they're strangers. There's some disconnect there in the recruiting to the practice of the players. I don't know exactly what that is, but we're now sending guys back in to recruit who just showed us they went 1 for 5 in the class before. That makes me a little bit nervous. So I do agree with you from everything we've heard. They probably do need to make a change on the staff, and I don't think it's a small change. They need to bring in someone with a reputation as being a great recruiter to get it done. Otherwise, they're in real trouble. You cannot lose an entire class and not feel the effect of it. Even if they bring in a superstar who's a one-and-done or a transfer, those are minor fixes. They're going to need to hit on a couple Tate-like players who can maybe stay an extra year or who kind of build that middle ground. But definitely a tough deal. I don't know if it's going to be the easiest place to recruit to either because you're going to get a lot of negative recruiting. And I'm telling you, I don't think the D'Angelo Russell behavior with the Lakers hasn't been a great week for Ohio State basketball, that's for sure. We're going to leave that there for now. No April Fools. When it comes to Mata, I think they've done enough that we're going to leave them alone. We are going to talk about some super positive information. We had him all over the site the last couple of days. Austin Mack, he was the first to lose his black stripe. Not surprising. Everything we had heard about him was so impressive. Here's the question for you, Alex. Who will be number 2 on black stripe removal?
Yeah, I think you have to immediately look to the early enrollees. I think Austin Mack might have been the first person to lose his black stripe before fall camp. I can't recall over the last 4 years anyone losing it in the spring or any of the early enrollees losing it. So we have to look back on that one. But so I'm not sure if it's going to happen this spring or fall, this spring before the fall. But I think you have to look at these guys that are in the program, have been there, are learning. And the 2 guys I consistently hear, well, actually, I guess there's 3 guys I consistently hear that are doing all the right things in Jonathan Cooper, Michael Jordan, and Antonio Williams. And, it's a tough call. You heard the way Urban Meyer was praising, and Greg Studrawa was praising Michael Jordan the other day. You've heard Meyer the other day talk about how Antonio Williams is a guy, he thought he could be the first to lose his black stripe. And then you have Jonathan Cooper, who just is an outstanding kid. He's done a great job on the field, off the field. He's put in tremendous work in the weight room, put on a lot of weight already. He's also helping a ton in the recruiting efforts and hosting recruits. And that's a kid who's just doing everything the right way. He's going to be an excellent student, an excellent person, and he's going to give it his all on the field. So 3 very good choices. But I'm actually going to go with Antonio Williams. The guy just seems like he's all business right now. As Meyer said, he thought he might be the first to lose the black stripe. So for me, that was kind of the tipping point. So I'll go Antonio Williams as the next, member of the class of 2016 to officially become a Buckeye.
Yeah, you've hit it. He did allude to it the other day, so I think that's the call. But I do think we see a trend developing here of the guys coming in early are really the mold types, the trend setters. So we've heard a lot of great things about Austin Mack physically. He's a good 6'2", adjusting to the bump better than the average receiver the average young receiver, because he's about 210 pounds. But it's their mentality, I think, that has impressed Meyer. I don't think it's much of a surprise that the black stripe comes off after the performance on the field and after they hosted Tyjon Lindsey, and he had such a wonderful visit. Speaking of people who didn't have the best visit at Ohio State, Urban Meyer taking some shots from Kentucky. Landon Young, offensive lineman who is now in the Wildcat fold, talked about how his last dalliance with Meyer was not a pleasant one. Talked about how Meyer called him an insubstantial player at one point. What's your vibe on this? Is this sour grapes from a recruit who didn't matriculate, or is this Meyer being a little too harsh for those who can't hack?
Well, first off, I think it's funny. I think the website that came out with that story was SEC Country, and they labeled it exclusive. Recruit says Urban Meyer treated him badly or something like that. They ultimately made it seem like this was going to be an expose on like all the stuff Urban Meyer did to this recruit to like make him feel like crap. I think it was actually He Treated Me Like Crap. That was the title. And then you read the content, and it's basically just a Q&A with this kid. And the only time that whole thing is mentioned, it's a question like, what's the funniest thing that happened to you during the recruiting process? And the kid just happened to say, well, it wasn't funny, I guess, but kind of the most odd thing that happened to me was when I went to Ohio State. Basically, I went up the first time. I got no attention from them. I came back, and all of a sudden I'm a 4-star recruit and all this stuff. And pretty much Urban Meyer told me I was an insubstantial player committed to an insubstantial school, that my only offer was from an insubstantial school in Kentucky. And I think, I'm not saying it was the best way to kind of talk to the kid, but Urban Meyer is who he is. He's a no BS type of guy. He's going to tell you how it is. He's intense. He's tough. He wants, as he says, grown-ass men in his program. And I think, the kid probably said, well, you're giving me attention now. Why weren't you giving me attention before? And Urban said, listen, we see you in person now again. We reviewed your film. When we saw you the first time, we just didn't think you were a very good player. And the kid was like, well, what about all the offers I had? He's like, what offers did you have? And he said, Kentucky. And he said, and basically Urban said, we don't recruit against Kentucky. I mean, that's virtually, like, other than, there's been the Matt Elam, I guess Landon Young, like, you could kind of consider it, Drake Jackson, the center last year. I believe all three of those kids are from Kentucky. But when has Kentucky really, truly beat out Ohio State for a recruit? Now, Kentucky's done a great job recruiting the state of Ohio. They get kind of all the guys that I think, some mid-level Big Ten programs like Purdue and Illinois and Indiana should be getting that Ohio State isn't taking. But at the same time, I think Urban, I'm not saying what happened. We don't know what happened. We don't know if the kid is kind of just going off his memory and a skewed memory, but basically, Urban told the kid how it was in his mind, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. That's just who he is.
Yeah, I believe this is time to call on a certain someone to explain what happened in this case.
You can't handle the truth!
And it's fitting, we'll end it right there. A recruit inability to handle the truth on April Fool's Day. Have a great one, Bucknutters. Feel better, Dave.